Today we are going to see about India, the relief features. So in this India relief features, let us learn what is the meaning of the word relief features. Relief features are nothing but the different landforms which are existing in our country. As we know, our country name is India. India, we have a variety of landforms. So before going into the details of the lesson, let us know what is the location of our country. Now, how do we locate a country? We are having two lines drawn parallelly and we have crisscross boxes on the world map. When we observe it, we can see a number of boxes covering the entire world map. So how do we come into a conclusion that where is the exact country? So the lines which are running horizontally are called latitudes. The lines which are running vertically are known as longitudes. So taking these two lines, the degrees of comparison, we can get the location of any particular country. Now coming to India's location, it comes in the northern part of the country, the world globe. So you can see the globe, if it is drawn on the world map, equator divides the entire globe into two equal parts. India comes in the northern hemisphere, that is clear by the location of the latitudes, that is 8 degrees to 37 degrees 6 inches north, and coming to the longitudes, it is towards the eastern part, that is from 68 degrees to 97 degrees 25 inches east. So when we come to the clarity of this, like where is India located, it comes into Asian continent, it comes into the northeastern part, and a small portion of it comes towards very close to the equator. Equator passes down of India. So we have in the southern part of India, we have a hot climatic type of condition. So this we are getting the clarity by the latitudes and the longitudes location. Now let us come to the time zone. How can we determine the time of a nation like India? So coming to the time zone of India location, basing on the latitudes and longitudes, we can get a clear idea of what is the location or time zone of any particular country. Let's come to India, the standard time zone of the world. Let us see the entire world map. We have latitudes and longitudes. We use latitude and longitudes not only for the location of any particular country, but we also use them for determining the time zones of various places. Now, as latitudes, equator is the 0 degree latitude. Coming to the longitudes, the 0 degree longitude is known as prime meridian or important Greenwich longitude or like Greenwich meridian. Coming to the point here, it passes through London at a place called Greenwich. So it is also known as Greenwich meridian or Greenwich longitudes. So that is considered as 0 degree longitude and the place zone is considered as the perfect time for the world. And coming to India, like India location we have seen from 8 degrees to 37 degrees of latitudes and 68 degrees to 97 degrees of longitudes. So how can we determine the time zone of our country India? Like we are having a gap. If you see any like latitudes or longitudes, we have 30 degrees here and 30 degrees here crisscrossing each other. So how can we determine the exact time of our country? You get a variation, like if you are in Gujarat, you get the time zone later when compared to a state like in Arunachal Pradesh where the sun rises in the east very soon, and by the time it comes to Gujarat, you have a variation of nearly 2 hours. How do you get the time variation of 2 hours in the same country? Then what is the time zone that we have to take for calculation of our day-to-day activities? How can we determine that one? So to avoid such kind of confusions, our great meteorologists have studied a detailed analysis of this and came to a conclusion that let us take the half mark, the exact half mark between 68 to 97, that is 82 degrees 30 inches will be the Indian standard time for the calculation of Indian time zone along with the world time zones. So when we take it from 0 degree Greenwich meridian time zone to our Indian standard time zone, that is 82 degrees 30 inches, you have a gap of nearly 5.5 hours where Greenwich meridian is later to us or like passing over a distance of 5.5 hour gap between Indian standard time and the Greenwich meridian standard time. So like that we come to the conclusion of the introduction of the lesson, like what is a relief features? Relief features meaning is that we have different landforms like mountains, plains, plateaus and different islands, deserts. All these we will be studying in the different types of landforms. It is collectively known as relief features. What is the location of our country? It is 8 degrees 37 inches to 68 degrees 97 degrees in the east. And coming to the time zone, the standard time zone of the world is Greenwich meridian, that is a 0 degree longitude or prime meridian, and Indian standard time is 82 degrees 30 inches, that is known as Indian standard time. It passes through Allahabad and it is 5.5 degrees variation between the Greenwich Meridian Time and the Indian Standard Time. Let us see the geological background of the formation of our country, India. How is India formed? Now let us see what is the meaning of the word geological background. See, geological background is not like something rocket science. It is just simply meaning that geographically how is India formed. What is geographically meaning? Like how was India earlier? Like what was the collisions happened in the landforms? Like there are two landmass, entire landmass of the world is divided into two major landforms, that is Angara land and the Gondwana land. The Indian landmass is a part of the Gondwana land. In the process of its transformation, when the earth plates are rotating, Gondwana land got transformed and moved towards the northeastern part and collided the Angara land, that is the Eurasian plate, and formed the landmass of India. In the gap between the Gondwana land and the Angara land, we have a big sea known as Tethys Sea. This Tethys Sea got buckled up for millions of years, and result of this buckled up and compressed forces which raised the water bodies to a higher level, the sea which is in the down level moved up and got buckled up, and because it is moving to a higher elevation, it got freezed and formed the present day Himalayas. So Himalayas are nothing but a water body which was buckled up with the external force of the earth's of the movement of Angara land and the Gondwana land when they were compressed by the earth plates movements and got buckled up for millions of years, not for one day, it was millions of years. Then it formed the Himalayas. The present day Himalayas are so elevated and so cool, like so completely covered with the frozen zones, is because of this kind of process which happened so many million years ago. Now from the Himalayas we have the origination of various perennial rivers. I think we all have an idea like what are the meaning of the word perennial rivers. The perennial rivers are the rivers which originate from the Himalayas and they never dry up. They don't have any summer dry ups or they don't have any breakups because of the lack of rains. So the perennial rivers are a continuous flowing rivers throughout the year from Jan to December. So these rivers like Ganga, Yamuna and Brahmaputra have drained and they started their journey from Himalayas and moved towards the respective lands, and while they're passing the journey or the process of journey, they carried a lot of mud, sand, soil, everything, and fill the lands which are empty in the northern part of Himalayas and fill them and made them a fertile lands or plain lands which are very good for cultivation. That resulted in the formation of our famous Great Plains, what we are having for us in our northern part of the Himalayas. Then we have the plateaus for us. We shall discuss about this in the next part in detail. In the previous one, we have discussed about how the Himalayas are formed, how the process of the Himalayas, geological process and the background, we have discussed it. Now let us see what are the Himalayas exactly at present right now. The Himalayas are extending from north to the northeastern range and covering the entire distance of nearly 2,400 kilometers, and it has an area which is occupied of nearly 5 lakh square kilometers from Jammu and Kashmir to Arunachal Pradesh region. They have a width of nearly 500 kilometers near the Jammu region. As they move on towards the northeast, the width goes on reducing from 500, in some areas it is 300, then it moves on to 200. As it reaches to Arunachal Pradesh region, it comes to its lowest, that is 90 kilometers of the width. So Himalayas are the largest young folded mountains what we have for us in our world in the present day, which are the young folded mountains in the sense you can imagine how much young they are. Means the mountains which we are having in the other parts are older mountains. These are formed nearly 70 million years ago. These are the youngest folded mountains what we are having right now. Now coming to the Himalayan division, Himalayas are divided into three parts, 1, 2, 3. The first part is known as Greater Himalayas, or in the technical terms it is known as Himadri. The average height of the Himadri range or the mountain ranges which are present in the Greater Himalayas are 6,100 kilometers from the sea level. If you take the consideration from the normal sea level, it is 6,100 meters, not kilometers, it is meters from the sea level, where it covers to a highest elevation. All the highest peaks in the world like Mount Everest, Mount K2 range, all these falls in this range of the height, and this is completely snow bounded region, and it is comprised of all the glaciers and these glaciers melt, tilt and move on, and they get buckled up, and these are the major sources which when they start to melt become the sources of the perennial rivers, which are the continuous flow of the rivers. So we got a clear picture like what are Himalayas length and width. The length is 2400 kilometers, the width is from 500 kilometers on the northern part of Jammu and Kashmir to by it moves to the Arunachal Pradesh, it gets up to 90. In the middle it is from 300, 200, it varies at the regions and different places. And the entire Himalayas are divided into three parts. They are Greater Himalayas, the first part. The Greater Himalayas are also known as Himadri region. The average height is 6100 kilometers for them. All the highest peaks in the world exists here, and they are 6100 meters from the sea level. Completely they are snow bounded, and it comprises of glaciers, and the melting of the glaciers is the source for the perennial rivers. So in the previous part we have seen the first division of Himalayas. The second one is the lesser Himalayas. These lesser Himalayas are also known as Himachal. These exist south of the Himadri region. The region what we have seen earlier is known as Himadri. To the south of that we have the lesser Himalayas or Himachal, which are extending just south of the Himadri region. Means it's a continuous range from north. If you see, it is the south of the Himadri region. The Himadri region, this is the most rugged relief. The lesser Himalayas are having most rough surface, the rugged relief, and they are highly compressed rocks. You find many rocks which are compressed, which got buckled up in the process of sedimentation, which we discussed in the earlier period, that when the plates are rotating and moving towards the northeast, when the plates got buckled up and formed as solid rocks, it consists of most highly compressed rocks of the region, and its region's height, as we have seen, the Himadri region height varies from 6100 from the sea level meters. So here it is very less when compared to that. It is 3700 to 4500 is the average range. It does not mean that everyone should have a low of 3700 or a high of 4500 meters. It may be in between of these two. Some peaks may be around 4500, some may be around 3900, some may be very low like 3700, but it is an average of between 3700 to 4500 meters. And coming to the important ranges of this region, we have two major important ranges covering in these two, the Himachal lesser Himalayas, that is Pir Panjal range and the Mahabharata range. That is, one is Pir Panjal range, the second one is the Mahabharata range, which covers a major part of the Himachal region. The famous valleys what are existing in this region are of Kashmir, the Kashmir valleys, and the Kangra and the Kulu region of Himachal Pradesh. These two are the major valley regions which are existing in this belt. And coming to the hill stations, we have many famous hill stations like Simla, Mussoorie, Nainital, Raniket, etc., which are comprising of this region. And the common feature of all this entire region is the entire region is covered with evergreen forest, the forest which never dry up. The grass leaves are completely green throughout the year. I think you all have the idea like what is the source of this one is because we are discussing about a region where we are having the perennial rivers. So perennial rivers does not dry up, so they supply water continuously for all the trees in the forest. So automatically all trees are growing with the good supply of water, and they have good soil also, which is very fertile and pollution free. So automatically the forests are completely evergreen in the region of lesser Himalayas. Now next part we will discuss about what is the region which is to the south of the lesser Himalayas or the Himachal region. Now towards the south of the second division what we have seen of the Himalayas, the lesser Himalayas. Let us go to the south of the lesser Himalayas, that is the third division of the Himalayas, that is Shivaliks. The Shivaliks are like completely down and very close to the normal region of the Indo-Gangetic plain. Now the width automatically it comes down. The width of the Shivalik range is 10 to 50 kilometers. It is not like completely 50 kilometers. In some areas it's very less because the land was completely converted into a plain land or a Gangetic plain land because of the flow of the perennial rivers, and some regions it's okay, it is up to 50 kilometers, and the height is just 900 to 1100 meters. When it comes to the first range, it is 6100 meters, the second range is 3700 to 4500, the third range is 900 to 1100 meters. Like you can understand the clarity that we are moving down from higher to lower, then we will come to the normal elevations. These Shivaliks are called with different names in the different regions. Let us say they are Jammu Hills in the Jammu and Kashmir region. They are called Mishmi Hills in Arunachal Pradesh. They are called Kachar in the Assam region. Like that they have the regional names. for this, but overall name what we have is the Shivalik region. This region is completely comprised of thick gravel stones and alluvium. The deposits of the alluvium which was brought by the perennial rivers got deposited here, and many of the gravel stones which are very thick got deposited in this region. So this region consists of thick gravel and the alluvium of the main key character of this Shivalik region. And we have the world famous dunes. The valleys of this region are called dunes. They are called Dehradun, Kotli Dune and the Patli Dune, which we have very famous Dehradun. I think we all have visiting places for many people. And coming to the Himalayas, like we are discussing about the divisions of the Himalayas. Himalayas ends with the key word of Brahmaputra Valley. Brahmaputra divides the Himalayas from India to the other nations here. And in Arunachal Pradesh region, the Himalayas take a hairpin bend. Means it's like a bend which takes like this and bends and acts as a boundary of India on the northeastern part of India. We are discussing that Himalayas are boundaries on the north, that is from Jammu and Kashmir. It separates India from the other regions on the north. At the same time, Himalayas also act, they take a boundary, hairpin boundary turn and acts as a boundary in the northeastern part of India for the northeastern states from the other parts of China, Bhutan and the other countries. So these Shivaliks, width is 10 to 50 kilometers. Their height is 900 to 1100 meters. They are called with different names in different regions. Like example, Jammu Hills in Jammu region, Mishmi Hills in Arunachal Pradesh and Kachar in Assam region. This region consists of the thick gravel and alluvium, and they are having world famous dunes like Dehradun, Kotli Dune and the Patli Dune. And it acts as a boundary with the Brahmaputra Valley. It takes a hairpin bend and acts as a boundary of India in the northeastern region. So the Shivaliks, when they take the hairpin bend and when they act as a boundaries of India in the northeastern region, they are known as in the northeastern region as the Purvanchal range. They consist of most of the sedimentary sandstones. The entire Purvanchal range is consisting of sedimentary sandstones, and these Purvanchal is having different names again in the different regions. Like see here, the Patkai Hills in the regions, the Naga Hills, the Manipuri Hills and the Mizo Hills, according to the regions and the local names were allotted to the Purvanchal range. The overall name which covers the Shivalik range is dividing the Purvanchal range. It is consisting of the sedimentary sandstones. And now we have discussed about the different types of Himalayas. Like Himalayas are divided into 1, 2, 3. The first part we have seen as Himadri, then Himachal, then we have seen the Shivaliks. What would India be if the Himalayas are not there? What are the advantages or disadvantages with the presence of the Himalayas? We have seen the formation of Himalayas, the geological background of the Himalayas, the existence of the Himalayas, the different divisions of the Himalayas, the height and width, the depth or the width of the Himalayas. All these we have covered now. Let us see the positives and the negatives of the Himalayan region. Let us see here. Because of Himalayas, India is having a good climatic condition when compared to the other regions. How can we say that India is having a good climatic condition? The next point is that we get cold winds which are coming from the polar region completely towards the equator, which are blocked by the Himalayas, so that we get rains and India does not turn into a desert land. The summers we are experiencing because of Himalayas, and in summer also sometimes we get rains, that also we experience by Himalayas, and we are having the monsoon type of climatic conditions which we are having in the entire India, where it is very helpful for the Indians, especially in a country like India where 80% of the people are dependent on agriculture. Is must we should have rains. We are having the rains because of the Himalayan existence, which block the winds which are moving from the Indian Ocean towards the north and get rains for us, and also blocks the cold winds which are moving from the northern region towards the equator. So it acts as a double barrier for both the edges. We have some negative points, like if India is not having the Himalayan existence on the northern part, India might have been turned into a desert. This is the condition when there are no Himalayas. Clearly understand this point. If we don't have the Himalayan region, India would have been a desert. And the sources, Himalayas act as a source of the perennial rivers which flow continuously throughout the year and fill the Indian Gangetic plain with the soil, water and everything. And they also provide a lot of silt to make the plains fertile for us. and provides for agricultural fertile land which is most useful for the Indian people, and most of the Indian people are dependent on that. So Himalayas have many advantages for us, and it's like a God gift for the Indian people, which made India into a non-desert land and made it into a fertile land because of the existence of the Himalayas. So in this part we have covered the Himalayas, the Himalayan regions, the different divisions of the Himalayas, the height, width, depth of the Himalayas, how are they acting for us, what are the positives of the Himalayan region, and we shall discuss in the further unit the other parts of the other divisions of the India. So the next major physical division what we are having for our country India is the Indo-Gangetic Plain. In the previous part we have decided about the Himalayas. Now let us go discuss about the Indo-Gangetic Plain. The Indo-Gangetic Plain, this is the second major physical division of India what we have. In the Indo-Gangetic Plain, it covers or it comprises of the three major Himalayan rivers, that is Indus, the Ganga and the Brahmaputra river. These three have originated from the Himalayas. So as we come to the point like these rivers originated from the Himalayas, obviously these all are the perennial rivers, which means that they flow continuously throughout the year. So they supply water for Indian land as well as for Pakistan continuously throughout the year. 20 million years ago, that is 20 million years ago, which means that 20 into 100 lakh, 10 lakh million years ago, which means 200 years ago, the entire land what we are discussing about the Indo-Gangetic Plain was completely a shallow land, which is a low land, which was filled with the water which brought the alluvial soil from the three Himalayan rivers, the silt, the accumulated soils which we got, the fertile soil was filled and completed this shallow land and made it a complete land. We got the Indo-Gangetic Plain. This is the geological background of Indo-Gangetic Plain. Now in the Indo-Gangetic Plain we have again major divisions for Indo-Gangetic Plain, that is the western part, the central part and the eastern part. Coming to the western part, what is there in the western part? As per the location of the western part, it covers the entire western part of India, that is the Punjab region, Haryana region and towards the Pakistan region, which starts from the Jammu edge towards the downwards, that is the Himalayas covering the Jammu region. The downward part we get the western part of the Indo-Gangetic Plain. The major thing is that Indo-Gangetic Plain is completely fed. The western part is fed with the water of Indus. Indus have 5 tributaries. It is Jhelum, Chenab, the Ravi, the Beas and the Satluj. Again they have their sources originating from Indus, which means that they all are the sources getting from the Himalayan belt, which also means that they are continuous flowing rivers or the perennial rivers. They never dry up here. And the water of Indus here is used 80% by the Pakistan people, and we get a percentage of a very minor percentage, that is only 20%. Indus originates in the Indian land, flows through Indian land and flows through Pakistan in the major portion and falls into the Arabian Sea. There is a reason why we get 80% of the water is flowing towards Pakistan and only a minor portion, that is 20% of it, we are able to use only in 2 states, that is Punjab and Haryana for our nation. And these 2 regions, or like the western part, is dominated by the fertile land of joining of 2 rivers. When the 2 rivers join, that region forms like a delta region or like a fertile land accumulated with the soil, silted and everything. You get the region known as the Doab region. The entire western part is dominated by the Doab region, which means that there is a fertile piece of land what is existing for us in the Indo-Gangetic Plain. Indo-Gangetic Plain is entirely a fertile plain, and this is the most fertile part what we are having for us in the region. The second division of the region is the central part. The central part is also known as the Ganga Plain. The central part is also known as the Ganga Plain. The major rivers which are passing through this Ganga Plain are from Gagar to Teesta. We have many rivers passing through the Ganga Plain, and the regions which are covered in this region are Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, partly Haryana, Jharkhand and West Bengal. The major rivers which are flowing through the central part or the Ganga Plain is, the major name itself it indicates that Ganga, then Yamuna and the tributaries of Yamuna like Son and Kosi. Coming to the third division of the region, that is the eastern part. The eastern part is completely having only the Assam region, and that also we have only a partial part, that is the Brahmaputra valley. The river which is dominant in this region is the Brahmaputra region. The river is Brahmaputra and the region is called Brahmaputra valley, and these all are the Himalayan rivers. So automatically we get a huge deposit of the gravel and the pebble stone sediments. The stones and the gravel stones like white color marble stones and all these things, you get it in the part of this and this is forming a variety of structure on the foothills of the Shivaliks. We have seen the Shivaliks like the three major divisions of the Himalayas, the Himachal, Himadri and the Shivaliks. From the foothills of the Shivaliks, it runs parallelly from 8 to 16 kilometers of width. Running parallelly means down to that parallel it runs a region called Babar, where the entire gravel stone, pebble stones will get settled, and it's in the nature of the porous nature. The small rivers and streams flow under these stones, as it is completely covering only the stones and the gravel pediments of all it is. It is like a stones which we see from upper part. From the under the stones we have the flow of the water which is passing through this region, which disappear in the Babar region and reappear for us after going to some distance of some kilometers, like some 50 to 60 kilometers say for example. Then the reappearance of this lower regions forming that like a swampy region or a muddy region or like a marshy track or a rough track. This marshy or a rough track is known as a terai region. The small rivers and streams which flow under the Babar, the porous pebble stones, and flow under them, they disappear in the Babar region. They disappear completely. Understand the point here? They disappear. In the Babar region, you don't find any rivers flowing. But under the stones, we find the rivers which are flowing, and they reappear after flowing through some distance like 50 kilometers or 60 kilometers, for example, and forms a swampy and a marshy track, which is like clearly evident. In this region, it is like absent, and it region is present. This region name is known as the Terai region. What is it known as? Terai. Terai is nothing but the swampy and the marshy track which is formed under the foothills of the Shivalik region or far away from the Babar region. So we have two major tracks. There is one is Babar, where is a porous nature and it consists of gravel and pebble stones, and we have the Terai region which is a swampy and marshy. It covers the peninsular plateau. In the peninsular plateau, mainly it consists of, why do we call this one as a peninsular plateau is, the word peninsular means that a place or a land which is covered with three sides of water. Like in the western part we have Arabian Sea, on the eastern part we have the Bay of Bengal, on the southern part we have the Indian Ocean, and then we have the Himalayas on the north, where three sides it is water surrounded and one side we have the land adjacent to it. So it is called a peninsular land, and it consists of old crystalline, hard igneous and metamorphic rocks. The major rocks which are found in this region are old crystalline rocks, hard igneous rocks and the metamorphic rocks. And we also find large amount of the metallic and the non-metallic minerals in this particular peninsular plateau region. So that is why this region is very important. We are talking about the region which is in the southern part of the Indo-Gangetic plain. We have discussed about the Himalayas, we have discussed about the Indo-Gangetic plain, and later we are moving on to the southern part of the Indo-Gangetic plain, that is the peninsular plateau. The peninsular plateau is topographically it is slightly tilted towards the east, which means like we have two major divisions. On the western part there is a Western Ghat and the Eastern Ghats. So when you see the Western Ghats to Eastern Ghats, the tilting is from Western Ghats we feel like it's slightly highly elevated when compared to the Eastern Ghats. This is the reason why all the rivers on the western part of India or like southern part of India flow from the western part and merge towards east and fall into the Bay of Bengal. This is the reason why we have the Western Ghats are a little bit elevated and towards the eastern part. Two major parts which cut the boundaries of the peninsular plateau with the water bodies is the Western Ghats on the west, Eastern Ghats on the east. The southernmost tip of India is Kanyakumari, and the peninsular plateau is again redivided into Central Highlands and the Deccan Plateau. The peninsular plateau has again been redivided into the Central and the Deccan Plateau. The Central Plateau again is having compromising here. If you see the India map, the region nearby to the Narmada region is having the Malwa Plateau, and moving towards the east near to the Bengal region we have the Chota Nagpur Plateau. This region is comparative to the Ganga region, it is a dry land because here the rivers are seasonal and not like a perennial rivers which are flowing through the Ganga region. The irrigation for the second crop, we have 3 crop seasons in India. The second crop region is completely based on the tube wells and the underground water levels, because we don't have the continuous flow of the rivers. They are continuously seasonal rivers which are flowing through here. We don't have any perennial rivers in this Malwa Plateau or in the Chota Nagpur Plateau region. The Chota Nagpur Plateau is also rich for mineral resources. That's why it is also known as Ruhr Valley of India, where we have the plateau. Now moving towards the south, we have a triangular region in the India map towards the south. This south part or the triangular region of India is known as the Deccan region or the Deccan Plateau. As we move on towards the south in the peninsular plateau, from Satpura region, we have discussed about the Malwa Plateau and the Chota Nagpur Plateau. Now we are moving towards the Deccan Plateau, the triangular belt. We are having the boundaries of Deccan Plateau is the Satpura on the north, and coming this side we have the Western Ghats extending from the entire western coast, ending with the Nilgiris, and towards the east we have the Kaimur range, the Mahadev Hills, the Michael Hills, and in the middle we have the Eastern Ghats ending with the Nilgiris. Now we are discussing about the two parts like Western Ghats and the Eastern Ghats. Let us analyze what are the differences of the Western Ghats and the Eastern Ghats, the key features of Western Ghats and Eastern Ghats, because they are the key features of the Deccan Plateau. If you study the Western Ghats and Eastern Ghats, you get a clear picture of the entire Deccan Plateau region. Let us come to the Western Ghats. The Western Ghats run parallel from along the western coast of the Arabian Sea. They are continuous, they are never breaked by any river. We have only one gap that is nearby to Goa region. Other than that, we are continuously range, and we have an average height of nearly 2000 meters elevated. So when I told you in the previous session itself that the elevation is slightly tilted towards the east, which means the Western Ghats are in higher when compared to the Eastern Ghats. So the Western Ghats are right now 2000 meters above from the sea level. They are higher than the Eastern Ghats. They extend to kilometers of 1600 kilometers on the entire from Gujarat to the Nilgiri region of the Kerala belt, and from there from the Gudalur to Nilgiri, and the famous hotspot or hill station like Ooty or Udagamandalam is located in this region. The highest peaks of these Western Ghats is Annaimudi, which is located in the Annamanai Hills. The Annaimudi Hills peak located in the Annamanai Hills, and Doddabetta, which is of 2637 meters. These two are the high peaks of the Western Ghat region of South India. Moving towards the Eastern Ghats, we have the Mahanandi region. Like on the north, we have the Mahanandi Hills, moving till the last edge, that is the Nilgiri Hills. They are not continuous like the Western Ghats. They are broken up by the rivers of Krishna and Godavari, where they cut into and fall into the Bay of Bengal, and they rarely exceed to a height of nearly 900 meters. And the highest point of the Eastern Ghats is known as Aroya Konda, which is in Chintapalli of Andhra Pradesh region. And we also have the hills of Nalamala region, Velikonda region, Palakondas, and also the famous Seshachalam hills, where the holy temple of Tirupati falls in the Seshachalam hills. These are the hilly tracts which are located on the eastern part. The entire Deccan Plateau is having the complete black soil, which is formed of the volcanic activity. Thar Desert. The Thar Desert is covering a region of nearly 2 lakh square kilometers in our country. It has occupied in that region. It is located in the western part of our continent, the Indian subcontinent, and it is on the leeward side of the Aravalli region. And the average rainfall in this region is just 100 to 150 millimeters per year. It's very less. It's completely zero, like when it compared to our normal regions. And the climatic condition of the existence of the region is it is sandy and rocky outputs. And the only river which flows through each region is the river Luni, and many of the small lakes which appear in this region get disappeared after some distance, and any of the lakes does not reach to any of the sea or the end point of the Arabian Sea. That is the reason why we don't find any large rivers. Only one river is found, that is the river Luni, which flows through the Thar Desert. And we have one more important thing is the canal which is known as Indira Gandhi Canal, which flows for 650 kilometers and covers a large part of the Thar Desert region and converted it into a fertile land for doing agricultural and purposeful works. So that is a major work which was done by the Indira Gandhi Canal of 650 kilometers. So the two major water bodies which are covering the Thar Desert region into normal land is river Luni and the Indira Gandhi Canal, covering a region of 650 kilometers, a wide width of the Thar Desert region, convert most of the Thar Desert region into a normal land. The other lands are semi-arid and arid type of climatic conditions. Now coming to the coastal plains, we have again divided the coastal plains into the western coast. The western coast, as we have discussed with the Western Ghats, they are continuous, and we have the Rann of Kunch in Gujarat to running towards the Kanyakumari, covering continuously without having any major gaps or breaks. But when it comes to the eastern coast, we have the division of the eastern coast again into three parts, that is Konkan, that is region from Maharashtra and Goa, then Canara, that is from plains of Karnataka, then again we have the Malabar coast, that is the region of Kerala, the Bay of Bengal plains are wide and they cover the regions of Mahanadi to Kaveri Delta, means from the Odisha region to the entire Tamil Nadu region are covered continuously with the breaks of the gaps which are existing in the different regions. And the major rivers which are creating the breaks for this eastern coast is the rivers of Krishna, Godavari, Kaveri and the other Godavari regions. And we have the different names for these in the different places. Like in Odisha it is called Utkal and it is called Sarkar in Andhra, and in Tamil Nadu it is called Coromandel. The coastal plains we have discussed. The famous lakes of the coastal plains are the Chilka Lake of Odisha, and the other two famous lakes are the Koleru Lake and Pulicat Lake, which are present in our state AP. And the most striking feature of the coastal plains is that agriculturally the coastal plains are the well developed is equal to that of the Gangetic plains. And coming to the last physical division or the major divisions of islands, that is, we have again two groups in the islands, that is the Andaman and Nicobar Island group and the Lakshadweep Island group. Coming to the Andaman and Nicobar Island group, these are located in the Bay of Bengal. These are the elevated parts which got submerged during some period of time of Mount Arkam Yoma, which is a Myanmar mountain ranges. These are formed because of volcanic origin, and the southernmost tip of India, that is Nicobar Island, or it is also known as the Indira Point. This Indira Point is not present right now. It got submerged in 2004 tsunami. So there is no Indira Point at present existing live. It got submerged during the tsunami in 2004. These are the basic features of the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. We have very good number of islands, like nearly 230 to 270 group of islands located in this. The number varies because some islands appear during some period and some islands disappear during some period. So we can't get the exact number. It is around 240 to 270. Coming to the Lakshadweep Islands, it is located in the Arabian Sea. They are of the coral origin. We find many corals here, and the area is just only 32 square kilometers, and we find great variety of the flora and fauna, like plants, fruits, animals and all these things. And after having a brief study of all these things, like we have seen the Himalayas, we have seen the Indo-Gangetic Plain, we have seen the Peninsular Plateau, we have seen the Western Ghats, Eastern Ghats, then we have seen the coastal plains, and finally to the islands. Now we can come to a conclusion that there is a vast diversity in the forms of lands which are existing in our country, that is India.